What's up, everybody? This is HBT, Harry Bernard Taylor, with the Straight Up Wrestling Show. I'm with my man, Danny Parris. He commentates with Chris and I sometimes, and pretty much he's basically a part of the Straight Up Wrestling Show. And we're going to talk about the difference between territories yesterday and today, and the difference between independents and territories. And my man Danny Parris, pretty much he's a historian of professional wrestling. He's a couple years younger than I am. But, you know, he's been watching wrestling about the same number of years. So Danny knows a lot. Probably have studied. He studied the business more than I have, especially on the independent side, which, like, you know, you guys that listen to us, you know, I've said plenty of times before that I left the business. Well, pretty much I left watching. You know, I left watching wrestling. I stopped watching wrestling for a while there, and just recently got back into it. But man, you talking about being in involved in professional wrestling and watching professional wrestling over the years when I was younger, into my teenage years, into my early 20s, and the glory of the territories, man. I loved it and consumed it as much as possible. But, you know, we're about to talk to a man right now who's consumed it very much, man, and just as much as I have, more than I have. And pretty much studied the thing, and pretty much it's been his heart and soul. And he's been a commentator for what, Danny, 30-some years or whatever. You've been for a while.
Since 1990.
Yeah, that's a long time. So that's 32 years, pretty much, basically. Yeah. So Danny, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the floor, man, for right now. You know, and I'll chime in every now and then. So let's go ahead and start with the difference between territories yesterday and today, man.
Okay, the difference between, by the way, territory system, a lot of people want to think it started up when wrestling started up. It didn't. Territory started coming around sometime in the 1920s, and we've acknowledged this in the past with our previous discussion on Ruth is not the National Wrestling Alliance, but the group National Wrestling Association, which later on merged into the NWA's Alliance group. They set up about 6 different promotions where they would all work together in the Midwest. And those were considered the early infancy of the territories. They agreed not to run on each other's properties. This is way before TV days. TV did not come along with professional wrestling until 1946. Everybody stuck to their own home base, and they would run, I would say, anywhere between 5 and 7 nights a week.
Oh, wow.
Weekends would sometimes be a double on Saturday, a double on Sunday, meaning a matinee and an evening. And they didn't. And another thing, I can't remember who put it together, making this thing working together. I know Pinky George, who was later on part of the major NWA, he was a lot of it because they was trying to get these guys where they would cooperate with one another and not step on one another and not fight one another. And they would actually trade talent too. So if you had a guy get burned out in Nebraska, you could send him to St. Louis, vice versa. You know, and you could pretty much be guaranteed that you're working. So if you're working 7 to 9 shows a week, you're gonna be able to make that as a full-time living.
Right.
So, and the difference between now, I will say that today's regional promotions or territories, which you may be under a contract, but I don't know that you can totally make a full-time living under some of those contracts, the way they're structured.
Yeah.
You have the current, I'm going to just list the current territories that are going on today. Well, we're not going to list full-time outside the U.S., but Major League Wrestling is of the Northeast.
Yeah, MLW. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Impact
Yes, that's a
I don't know.
yeah. I would consider that a territory. Yeah, I was looking at that. I've been watching that lately, and I've been, and I see that as a territory. Yes.
And I do think they run out of Florida.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I think that's where they're based out of. NXT, I would consider it a territory.
Well, they are part of. Well, yeah, well, you can consider that a territory, but it's basically part of the WWE. So.
Of course, but I mean, they're a subsidiary of the WWE.
Right.
But however, they don't work it like the way they used to. Used to be if you were a subsidiary of the AWA or NWA,
Yes.
then your world champion from the main office would go into those territories.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And NXT and those, what they do is they're trying to make that a standalone group.
Right.
You have cameos from some of the major stars from there from time to time. I was hoping when he brought that back that you would occasionally have the SmackDown or Raw champion go over there and defend, but
yeah,
that never did happen.
That could be coming, Danny, a little bit later, but right now it's not. I mean, you do have the New Day, who's went over, and now they are the the NXT Tag Team Champs. But and you had NXT champion defend his title, I think once on Raw or twice, whatever. But you had Dolph Ziggler win it, and for a little while, and he was up there on Raw. I think he only had it for a couple of weeks though. So
yeah.
So you did have something like that, but yeah, they still a standalone thing pretty much. So you're right on that. I agree.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Impact. I wouldn't consider this thing that's become real popular. What the heck was that? George South was on this stuff recently. That
GLW or something like that.
Oh, it's real.
I think it was GLW.
It's real rough.
Yeah, it is.
It's I can't think of the name of the promotion, but anyway, it has hardcore wrestling,
right?
Regular wrestling.
Believe me, everybody that listens to this most likely will know what you're talking about. I can't think of the name of it or whatever.
It's an underground group. They recently did do a match for South. Was involved in a very bloody encounter.
Yeah, but I'll put the name of it in the description box.
I apologize for that.
Right.
But could develop into a territory. It's just that they're not running enough.
Right.
To be a territory. And also, this almost disqualifies some people because Impact and Major League Wrestling do have TV deals.
Yes.
But the other group does not. But to me, if you're going to qualify as a territory, you need to have some form of television.
Right.
Because otherwise the radius of seeing it is not that big, and it's got to be pretty good sized.
Right.
ECW was a territory.
Oh, yes.
Smoky Mountain was a territory.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The other thing difference, in the 90s we had South Atlantic Pro Wrestling here. Well, that was with the Robert Ford and Paul Jones big feud, other things. But the difference also between then and now, and I saw this firsthand, if you were an independent wrestler and you went to talk to John Ringley, who was Jim Crockett Jr.'s brother-in-law at one time. Well, that's another story for another time. We won't talk about that, though. If you went to go talk to John Ringley or Sandy Scott, George Scott, rather, not Sandy, and any of those guys about, hey, I'm an independent guy, I want to wrestle for you, blah, blah, blah. They would try you out. Sometimes they try you out on TV. But the thing that this is what ought to be brought back, but I don't know if it will. They required, in those days, you were at least 190 pounds.
Right.
If you did not weigh in that neighborhood, you would not get hired.
Oh, wow.
That's a fact. And that may make a lot of people very angry to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not taking anything away from the Rey Mysterios or even your Jamie Lees or some of these light heavyweight guys that are really, really talented, but they just had their own set of rules.
Oh, yeah.
Where does that go? Also, back then, you had to have boots and tights that were professional.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you came out, they wouldn't allow us cut-off jeans stuff, tennis shoes, the John Cena stuff. You had jackets or robes or anything that had to look very professional. It had to be very, 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 very professional.
That was only one. I remember one guy back in the Mid-Atlantic years ago, Danny, who would come out there and wrestle in jeans. I can't remember who it was.
Klondike Bill, probably.
No, well, Klondike Bill, he would wrestle in overalls, jean overalls. But there was a guy that used to come out there with like cut-off jeans. I mean, they wasn't cut, they wasn't cut. They was already, they was made that way. But it was somebody who used to come out like that. I think Charlie Fulton, when I first seen him, he did it for a little while. Not long, but I think Charlie Fulton did it. If it wasn't Charlie Fulton, it was somebody like that. It was a character, it was a wrestler who was similar to him. I'm just trying to think of who it was, but I was so shocked to see that.
Was it wasn't the Alaskans, was it?
I'm not sure.
The Alaskans were Jay York and Frank Monty.
No, it wasn't them. I remember they used to come out similar like that too.
And they would wear the lumberjack with shirts.
Yeah, they did. They did that. But yeah, just to make a long story short, but you didn't really see that. You didn't see people doing that. Mostly everybody, 99% of people that wrestled in the business, they either wrestled in a one piece or they had a full body suit, and it was wrestling gear. And you had your boots and your wrestling boots and everything. So yeah, it was 100% professional back then. I mean, when you saw it, you knew it was a wrestler, and that's what it was. You didn't look like no boxer coming out there. You didn't look like no MMA fighter. You look like a wrestler straight up. So yeah,
right.
Yes,
now,
different.
I know you can recall George Two-Ton Harris.
Oh yes, oh yeah, no doubt.
Two-Ton wore long black tights, and he wore a singlet that covered up his entire upper body.
Yes.
His neck and his head and his arms.
Oh, yeah.
And he is on YouTube. If you ever want to check him out, he is a complete character.
He's right.
Gorilla Monsoon used to wear something like that, too.
Who did?
Who's Gorilla Monsoon.
Oh, yeah. Gorilla Monsoon did, too. Yes, he did. He was completely covered up on top, just about, basically.
Yeah. So, and also, back in the territory days, and gosh, they did quit just, but I don't know what year. They were real heavy on 2 out of 3 falls matches. Yeah,
they was. But that was basically, that pretty much ended basically in the 60s, though, didn't it, Danny? Because, I mean, in the 70s, in the early 70s, I know they did it. Up until around 71, 72, I think, after 72, they pretty much started going with a lot of one-fall matches. But I remember Ole Anderson, Ole and Lars, maybe it was Ole and Lars against somebody. Can't remember who it was. They was in a 3-fall match back in like 70, when I was like 5 years old. I remember watching the match. It was a brutal match too, man. I can't remember who they was wrestling, but it was Ole and Lars Anderson against somebody. I'm not sure if it was. I don't know if it was Jack and Jerry Briscoe. I'm thinking it was. And man, it went down pretty wild. I'll never forget that.
Probably took almost an hour to do it too.
Yeah, it did. Well, it took the whole program, pretty much.
The difference also were some of the rules, by the way, back then.
Right.
You had to hold on to a tag rope with your feet on the mat to take the tag. If you were holding on that rope, referee said the tag was not legal.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, if you got through over the top rope and hit the floor, in those days, that was an automatic disqualification.
Yep.
Hitting somebody with a chair was a disqualification. If you took a man and rammed his head into a ring post, that was a disqualification.
Yep.
You never hit the referee. If the referee got involved some sort of way, you could be disqualified.
Right.
Referees back then also would warn you about punching was illegal, choking, pulling hair, pulling trunks, gouging eyes. Kicks were legal in the aspect that you could use the flat of the foot. But if you kick with the point of the toe, like you're putting a football, that was highly illegal.
Oh, yeah.
Breaking on the ropes for a count of 5, if you stayed on there after a count of 5, that was a disqualification. A lot of these, that count of 5 rules to effect for independents. The over-top rope rules not in effect. They don't acknowledge the tag rope anymore, which they ought to. To me, it add more dramatics to the match. And also this about the weight divisions. I would be okay if you let some of the smaller guys in, but I would actually, if you could, I don't know how you can explain this, but you've always had your junior heavyweights and your heavyweights.
Right.
Well, if these guys really think, they're that entertaining, and a lot of them really are, then why don't you create a middleweight to be?
I always wondered that, Danny. Why they never had that? I mean, and I don't ever remember any territory having anything like that. I mean,
I do.
Who had that? I think. Go ahead.
Okay. In Mexico.
Oh, in Mexico. Okay.
You had that, and you still do. Everywhere in Europe, you had it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Europe had something like that.
But I don't know that you've heard of the living legend, Johnny Saint.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Johnny Saint was a several-time middleweight champion.
Right.
And sometimes over there they would do what's called a catchweight match. Which that meant you could put the middleweights and the heavyweight in there together in a singles match. Or a light heavyweight and a heavyweight singles match. It meant that, okay, this is not within the weight division, but it's unlimited weight division for one match. Probably so somebody could get in contention for the world title. So, anyhow, and I think I said this earlier, I forgot. Back then, to qualify as a territory rather than an independent, you pretty much had to have you had TV.
Yeah.
I don't know what year, but somewhere along the way, you did see some territories that did pop up. I mean, some independents that did pop up that did get TV. I'm going to plug this here because we're not talking about it. The guy that does YouTube under Armstrong Alley, go under there and you can find all kinds of, groups that were territories that had TV, independents that had TV, and you would be surprised at how good some of this is. I mean, there was a group in Pennsylvania at one time in the early 80s. They were using nothing but B-team WWF guys.
Right.
I mean, that was a precursor to what would be a developmental.
Oh yeah.
But they didn't say it was sanctioned by the WWF. fact, they just didn't acknowledge any of the champions at all. They just put guys out there and tried to make it very, very competitive.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, man, if you didn't have TV, if you started a territory, or what you tried to start a territory, you didn't have TV, you pretty much was dead. And you had to be an independent back then. You had to put yourself out there as an outlaw promotion or whatever, or just because you just wasn't gonna get a lot of people coming out to check you out. Now you definitely could, because back then people just didn't have the same entertainment. They didn't have the same entertainment options that they have now. So yes, you would be like like a semi-pro football team or something like that, where people will go down and see if you holding a wrestling event. There's going to be a certain amount of people in a town, especially in a rural area. There's going to be a certain amount of people that are going to see your posters and everything like that, and they're going to go down. But if you really wanted to, draw the fans and put yourself out there where you're going to have some kind of popularity, where you're going to make money for your promotion, because in those territories back then, you had to make money, because those territories, they didn't have TV deals like they have now. You had to pay for your own TV. You paid the station. And then off of that, I guess I know back then you did have these territories. They would have your local car lots and things like that on there. So I get, those people paid paid sponsorship to be advertised on the show. But overall, if you didn't have that, man, you pretty much was in trouble, because you're trying to pay your wrestlers. You're trying to pay wrestlers basically off of that one show, those one-offs. And back then, man, you had these wrestlers. They would go from town to town, and I know a lot of times they didn't make a lot of money, except a lot of the top guys. But if you went from town to town, and a lot of these guys worked 5 to 7 nights a week, they was able to make a living. So these outlaw promotions, they had to compete against that. And man, that was real hard, because it got to the point where wrestling had got so popular, like in the 60s and 70s. Well, in the 50s it was pretty popular too. Where the traveling was so good, and then once you got established in the territory, you was making decent enough money to where you can make a living out there on the road. And then you have this outlaw promotion coming up, and they don't have TV. And they have to pay people off that little gate, and don't know the numbers. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers. I remember a couple outlaw promotions that did run in Greenville, that ran some shows in Greenville, and I remember people going down and checking that out. Sometimes you could get, sometimes they would get 80, sometimes you get like 130 people, but it was really hard for an outlaw promotion to run in Crockett's territories.
I would say
very hard.
I'm going to ask you if you remember this would be. It's a sort of correction on what you just said, but they used to say this at the end of each Crockett program. So this program has been brought to you in exchange for commercial consideration.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, Billy Powell used to say that end of every TV show. What that meant is Jim Crockett did not have to pay for the airtime.
Right.
The TV, all those commercial airtime put on there, paid for it. Say you got 45 minutes of wrestling, 15 commercials. Then the 15 minutes of commercial airtime paid for you to be on the air.
Okay.
That was done in every promotion. In fact, that's what killed a lot of promotions later. Is they was wanting to put them under the book was just paid program.
Okay. Well, the one thing about it though, if Crockett must have got money from somewhere, as far as these guys wrestling on TV, unless he just paid them, paid the TV people from the live gates, because I know they got paid. Everybody that wrestled on TV got paid. If you wrestled on TV, I think it was $45 back there. What it was, 70s and the 80s or whatever. I can't remember. But they said, you got paid $45 if you wrestle on TV.
Well,
yeah.
And the difference between that was also this: they had a standing rule. If you were main event talent,
yeah,
like a Jack Briscoe, you wrestle the TV tape, but main event talent not accept pay for people.
Yeah.
And the underneath guys, I think they got $50 a match.
Yeah, yeah.
So they got $50. So if you wrestle 2 tapes, which I was Crockett, Worldwide Wrestling, and Mid-Atlantic, and you got $100.
Yeah, yeah. What's the name? But yeah, I think who was it? Flair or Steamboat said you got 45. With the underneath guys, and I think he said 65 or I think it was 75 for top talent or something like that. A flat fee if you wrestle on TV.
But now let me say this:
but $50, you're probably right. Yeah.
If you were a territory that did not tape in studio, and you taped at an arena, then everybody got paid.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Because WWF taped in Pennsylvania, Allentown, and somewhere else up in that area, and those were buildings that held about 3,000 apiece.
Oh yeah.
Dick DeBruger, who up in Indianapolis, Market Square Arena, was a building that held about 7,000 people. It was taped on every Monday. You know they got paid.
Oh yeah.
Because that thing was he didn't. He had so much going on that they did not. They couldn't tape it. The man was too big.
Right.
AWA did have studio taping up until they got ESPN. When they got ESPN, they took it straight to the internet.
Oh yeah.
So, but in the difference also, I should say this. I'm sorry about rambling, but the regionals back then would do 7 and 9 shows a week, and the regionals today might do 1 to 2 shows a week.
Right.
And what really gets on my crawl about some of these guys, I'm not going to name any names for that. They're running independents, and even though they're running a successful town, you're running only that one town once a month.
Right.
And it's 12 shows a year. Compare that to 180 shows a year.
Yeah.
And also, if it's your own hometown, you ought to be able to draw in your own hometown.
That's true.
I mean, so some of these guys go, yeah, man, we're starting something big here. I'm like, how often are you running? 12 times a year.
Right.
That ain't that cool. That's not nothing. That ain't nothing at all.
No, it's not.
That ain't even a drop in a doggone bucket.
That's true. And it's really hard to get yourself established if you're going to run once a month, once every other month. And some of these, we have independents right now who's not starting up to March and April. So, and I heard MLW has a seasonal break. They have a seasonal break. They wrestle for a while, then they go on a break for a little while. So I'm just like, what in the world is that? I mean, you never heard of anything like that back in the territorial days, and in the real territorial days, like you said, these guys ran sometimes 4 to 7 nights a week, and that's just how it was. There was no breaks in between, anything like that. It was constant. You got on TV, and then every town that was in your territory got their turn to see you. And then if you was a big territory like Mid-Atlantic or whatever, sometimes they would end up in certain part, in Canada. They could end up going out to, to New York or out to Philadelphia sometimes. So and then later on they started going out to Chicago. So every town back then used to have their turn at these territories. And sometimes they would be in two different towns in one night. So they would have, like you said, A B team, A and B team, and I think what's name had a C team too. Crockett.
And I'm going to elaborate on that. The Crockett, I think in 1978, started with Frank Tunney in Toronto. They were doing what's called Maple Leaf Wrestling.
Right.
And now Maple Leaf was basically a Mid-Atlantic in that area. They used a ton of Mid-Atlantic talent.
Oh, yeah.
And they had their own TV show.
Yeah.
But they also had ties with AWA and WWF.
Right.
Now Maple Leaf ran 4 nights a week for 4 weeks. So that made them a territory, but kind of on a part-time schedule. And that was something else right there. And for a while, they did not even tape TV. They were just using clips from other promotions, this TV footage to fill an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But they did move into that. And so Crockett, what he was having to do at that time, for example, he would have an A team, B team, and a C team.
Right.
That's 7 or 9 times a week. And then some of those guys would get sent to Frank Tunney. Not to be confused with Jack Tunney, that's his brother.
Right.
Anyway, so they would go to Frank Tunney when they'd be over there for a while, then they'd come back. And then also, years later, Jack Mulligan and Flair had a territory in Knoxville. And by the way, Maple Leaf also used Canadian talent on their shows. So
they used AEW talent?
No, they used Canadian talent.
Oh, Canadian talent. Yes.
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon that you go in there and you see Leo Burke.
Right.
Or you see Rudy and Terry Kay. Or Leo Burke did cameo over here some. He even came back to when we went on TV. And the Knoxville promotion had some Tennessee guys up under it. And then they would have these Mulligan, John Studd on top, blah, blah, this and that and the other. It did not last long. It only lasted about 6 months. So it was very difficult for them. If you were on the roster, that entire roster, boy, I wish I had something. I can, but I'm not now. Come up with the roster of, say, 1980.
Whose roster was that again now?
If it was Crockett's, I mean, we're considering preliminary guys and everything.
Oh, I got that. I got all those. I know how to get to all those rosters.
Well, at one time, I had a roster for 1980.
Yeah.
And
I might have seen you that stuff.
Full time, he had 44 wrestlers. 44.
Right.
That's counting the preliminary guys. And all. Now, Georgia, for example, would only have like 16 main event guys.
Right.
And they would have preliminary talent coming in and vocals all over the place. And it was very difficult for them to come up with something because, you know, it was dependent on who they used. Like, well, let me just say this. They had their standalone guys that were there that would get put over on house shows, but they would not do it on TV, like Mike Jackson.
Yeah.
Chick Donovan, Dale Veasey, all these guys were super talented guys.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's how he dealt with that. And now I will get into the difference. Well, with the independents is the independents stayed. Gosh, let me just tell something quick. I first started in 1990. I had a friend of mine that was wrestling. And I met him, and we went to several shows, met promoters. I was willing to go. And finally announced because I wanted to train wrestle, but that didn't work out because And the paydays were the same as an announcer was the rest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Oh, wow.
$25. So shoot, I said, I'm not going to go ahead and bump around for what could be
Oh,
but
yeah.
if you're wrestling, you could go past that.
Oh, yeah.
You can make more than that, but as an announcer, you could. So I just stuck to the announcing part. But it took me meeting all kind of promoters to get my doggone foot in the door to become an announcer. Now today, geez, only thing you gotta do is show up with a big dumb smile on your face, tell them you'll do it for a box of popcorn, and you're hired.
Yeah. Well, one thing, as far as, I'm not really changing the subject or whatever, but I'm talking about territories. Back in the day, it was so many different territories, some that I really don't see today. And you can look at MLW, you can look at Impact. NXT, have been able to do it. But one thing about the territories, what made them so great back then, even though they only had a certain amount of guys, they was able to build so many different stars through those territorial systems, Danny, to where, they was able to, with a smaller roster size, like especially Crockett and Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I can say Mid-South to a certain point, they was able to build a roster, man, comparable to, something just as big as what you saw in the WWF, which is the WWE now. And even when WCW got big, Crockett, his Mid-Atlantic days was, he had more stars built up into that than he did into these big conglomerates, man. I mean, these guys, they really were stars. And, and then you had WWE, which was WWF, like I said, they would go and pluck guys from those systems. And those territories was able to replenish their roster and build another star. You just don't see that now. And that's one thing that hurts the independents is that they want you to come in there and be a star. You come up with a name or whatever, and it's basically up to you. And they want to see if you're going to bring the people and things like that. You don't have the people involved in the business now that's trying to build a star. They don't really know how to put the storylines around them or put them against the right talent to face them to build a star. And it's hard now. But that's not just in the independents. That's with everybody. WWE, AEW, all the way down. You just don't have that like we had back in the day, where these guys were stars, and they was pretty much stars in their own little territory. They were stars in their own territory, and then if they wasn't, and once they got, and like you said, once they got burnt out, they would send them somewhere else, and then they would go somewhere else and see if they got over in that place. And sometimes they got over more, and sometimes they didn't. And if they didn't get over more, they would come down to, they could come back to where they was at, or they can go and try another territory before they came back, which that's what made it so great.
Yeah. Well, but the difference too was today, and I do know this. I know one guy. I'm not gonna mention his name. He told somebody, he says, "All I do for a living is wrestle."
Right.
Well, shoot. Let's say if he takes 3 bookings a week, that's $75.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I can't live off $75.
Heck no.
And back in those days, if you're so you could rest and do it full time, but it would happen somewhere with you always. That's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, one thing some people not really talent, but it did happen later. If you were doing independent, they didn't want you to work in credits. And territories at the same time. that. Even though there were some people that didn't want to see you or right after that. They didn't want to. I think they thought.
All right, Danny. Let's pick this up. We got 40 minutes here. I'm gonna go ahead and pause it, and we'll pick this up